This might be an unpopular opinion, but I think PvP and MMOs is...
Hey guys, it's your boy Vladis, and today in this video I wanted to go over a video that Asmongold was doing during his stream regarding Chrono Odyssey. He was watching the 17-minute gameplay footage, and there was a lot of really interesting things that he said just as far as MMO design in general. So let's go through it in this video.
Pay to win?
To fallen
I don't know. It's a Korean game, so probably.
Ritual,
but who knows? They said it's not going to be pay to win. The problem is that in Korean games, they think pay to win is when you can buy things that you can't get without playing the game. But the American version of pay to win is when you can spend money to accelerate progress. So like they'll draw a distinction between pay to progress and pay to win, where in fact, I don't think there is a difference. I think it's the same thing.
So Asmongold was talking about pay to win, and I do believe that the Koreans or just people on the eastern side of things have a very different view of what pay to win is. In America, I completely agree with what Asmongold said. Anything that you can use, whether it's all of these different tokens that you buy to increase your player power, whether it's like a certain item level, you need to get this token in our game, and then you need as many of those tokens as possible to increase your item level even further. Now, you can earn them in game, or you can choose to buy them in our shop, which is a hell of a lot easier. Any of those systems, and to me, are completely pay to win. And even if it is just like, hey, come to our cash shop, you can just buy the sword. You know, who would have thought, right? And the good thing about Ashes of Creation, just like Chrono Odyssey is trying to do, is it's just going to be a cosmetic cash shop. There's not going to be any pay to win or pay to convenience, at least in Ashes of Creation goes. I know Steven Sharif has been on record many a time talking about pay to win, talking about that there's really not going to be anything as far as pay to win in his game because he's been burned in the past as far as Lineage 2 and Arcade goes. So Chrono Odyssey, I think they did say that they might have some pay to convenience things. We'll see how pay to convenience it really is. I think it's going to definitely lean in pay to win. But let's go into the next talking point.
I think that MMOs need to have solo content that is challenging, that players can like work through and do on their own. I think that like the idea that MMO endgame needs to be massively multiplayer raids, I think that's antiquated thinking. And you need to have like solo challenges like, you know, like the WoW Mage Tower or like, you know, the vanilla WoW Hunter solo quests in order to get Rock Dolar or stuff like that. Delves, yeah, in a way, right? But like Delves, you have groups. You need something both. You need both. Yeah, no, you definitely want to have both as well. You want to have group content as well. But having like challenging, well-designed solo content is mandatory now for an MMO, I think.
And I actually am 100% agreeing with Asmongold. I love solo challenging content. And the one thing that I've noticed in Ashes of Creation's design is that I don't know if they're going to do anything for the solo individual. Everything is pretty much group based. Now, again, I love me some group-based gameplay, whether it's like PvE stuff with like dungeons and raids and world bosses. And then even if you have like the PvP stuff, which is like your guild wars, your node wars, your castle sieges, node sieges, you know, out on the ocean doing stuff on your caravel or your ship. There's going to be a lot of activities for groups, but is there really going to be those solo things for players? Now, you can think of like treasure maps being a thing that solo players can do, but as far as challenging content, maybe doing like a little mini boss. And I think this is where instance content can be levied for the single player. If you just want to go in by yourself into a kind of like a puzzle dungeon, or you do like a gauntlet of like, you know, 3 to 5 bosses and just seeing like, you know, how far you can get. Like, I love stuff like that. And the easiest way to incentivize it is to just don't do player power. Just make an achievement based system, or even do cosmetics, which I think that's going to be something Ashes of Creation is going to do already. But I think having things for the solo player is actually very valuable in today's age for MMO design.
It's the problem with like field bosses and world bosses is they're oftentimes, if they're really, really hard, then nobody really does them, or they're camped by like 2 or 3 guilds like in classic WoW. And if they're really easy, they're effectively just loot pinatas that are boring. So it's very hard to make world bosses make sense and work. The big problem with MMOs is a lot of MMOs try to force mandatory player friction, and they do so in a way that just makes the game not fun. Because, like, for example, if you really want to get something from a world boss, but you're not in one of these top guilds, okay, well, you should just quit the game, right? Like, I mean, there's no way you can do that because you just can't, you can't achieve that goal. So giving players different ways to approach problems and different ways to go about solving them is massively important.
I think this is actually a great point. I think the devs at Intrepid are going to have it in for themselves on world boss design. I think is my experience as a gamer, is that world bosses tend to be super easy. One or two mechanics you have to worry about, and it just beat it till it's dead. But then when I see things in like the older MMOs where anytime where there's PvP friction involved within the world boss, you kind of have to make them easier because you need to have it compensated for the fact that you could engage in PvP from other players. And I really don't know what's going to work in Ashes of Creation. I think overall, it's going to come to that community and to see like what we decide it's best for the direction for Ashes. I just don't know. Like, I don't know what I would want. I know when it comes to raiding, I don't like easy bosses because they're just really boring. I'm just standing and delivering and the boss is dying. I got to move from this line to that line and go over here to go over there. It's just like, it's super easy, right? So when it comes to world bosses, I think world bosses need to have a kind of a time limit to engage that PvP. But then that goes into Asmon's next point, which is the forced friction. When there's forced friction and you have these groups, especially when they're very coordinated and stuff like that, if you come from a small guild, like how are you ever really going to take part in killing that boss when you can't be as sophisticated as these larger groups that have like all these PvP chads, like killing the bosses over and over and over again, right? So it's going to be interesting, like especially in Ashes of Creation, once Alpha 2 gets further underway. Like I'm really curious what a year is going to do. Like if we're talking June of next year where Ashes is going to be as far as design goes and how far it's come, interesting stuff. But I think the world boss discussion is going to be something we're going to be having a lot more feedback on in the future.
This might be an unpopular opinion, but I think PvP in MMOs is retarded, and you should never try to even balance it. You can have like large-scale spectacle PvP like castle sieges and stuff, but the reality is that MMOs are not designed for PvP. And the design of PvP is directly antithetical to the design of an MMO. MMOs are about having constant progress, and PvP is about being on an even playing field. And so how do you create good MMO PvP? In my opinion, you don't. That's why every MMO that has PvP is either a very niche MMO or it's dead. I don't think that PvP in MMOs appeals to a large-scale audience, and I don't think that a very successful MMO should focus on it or make it their goal. Final Fantasy XIV PvP isn't bad. Yeah, but how many people are doing it? Probably nobody. And that's the thing. It's that if you're looking for a PvP experience, you're going to go to a PvP game. That's the difference. Like, who's looking to be a serious PvPer in some bullshit MMO when you could do that in League or Valorant or an actual competitive like Street Fighter? I think trying to make a PvE game have PvP in it generally just creates more friction and annoyance, and it creates balancing problems that don't really need to exist.
Engage with other players as you choose. Draw your weapon.
And also, anybody who's disagreeing with this opinion, just look at the success of a lot of PvP MMOs. They're failures. They all are. They're dying. Like, yeah, there are some people that play them, but in a general sense, they are declining massively. Like, I mean, this isn't an opinion. It's just data. What do you call a failure? MMOs like Albion are very successful. They might not be WoW size, but they're multi-million-dollar games. That's true. And you can have a small-scale game like Albion Online that's more PvP-based, but if you really want to make a generational, large-scale MMO, you have to disconnect PvP from the core gameplay loop. Most people do not want to PvP.
Okay, here we go. PvP in MMOs is the R word. So I do agree that I think a lot of players don't like PvP. I think that's very true. But it's also true that a lot of players do love PvP. And whether Asmon wants to acknowledge that or not is really on him. You know what I mean? I know the data proves the fact that, a lot of players do prefer. And I'm not saying they do. I mean, of course they do. I think a lot of players don't like to be in the hindrance of PvP. However, you know, you look at games like Albion Online, which I, you know, was looking that up real quick, and that game has like anywhere between 350 to like 500,000 players, which again, online, it could all be BS or whatever. Steam Charts has it super low. It has like 5,000 players, but of course, Albion is also on mobile now. The last thing I saw too was that it had over 6 million registered accounts, but that also includes inactive. Lineage 2 had over 27 million registered accounts by 2009 or something like that. ArcAge was a huge PvP MMO as well. And I think again, and I've always said this, I think Ashes of Creation is probably going to be bigger outside of the United States. Now, a lot of people consider that to be a failure because they're making Ashes of Creation for a Northern American audience. So if it's more popular elsewhere, then was it really successful here where it was meant to be? I don't know. But my whole point is that I think we deserve a difference. We have so many WoW clones right now for PvE content that that's why I don't play WoW really, because it's just more of the same. Like if you're actually looking for something different, there really isn't another MMO that is different, you know. And if there is another MMO different, just like Asmongold says, they're either dead or it feels like you're just playing by yourself, or you know, the systems aren't that great when it comes to PvP. So I think that's why Ashes of Creation is taking this approach of PvX, because they want to provide the best of both worlds of PvE and PvP. But we'll see how far they go and how deep they go with that feedback and stuff.
Another thing with PvP is that this is what MMOs do a lot, is that they try to uniquely incentivize doing PvP. And in my opinion, if content isn't fun to do, then instead of incentivizing it, you should either change it or get rid of it. If people aren't engaging in these systems, maybe there's a reason for that. And so instead of trying to force a square peg in a round hole, just say, okay, this isn't working. It's not really something that would work, and people don't really like this. Let's not do it. So a lot of times these games have PvP only zones, or they have some sort of reward that you have to PvP in order to get. I think that these are directly player antagonistic systems. This is trying to force a player to do something that they don't want to do. And I think that whenever you look at MMOs, the vast majority of players do not want to PvP. I've seen this with pretty much every MMO. And this is with any new game, right? They want to maybe be able to do it, like, you know, if they choose to, but they never want to be forced into it. And I think that's really the main difference that I'm making here, is that anytime that a player feels like they're forced into PvP in an MMO, I think that the developer is making a huge mistake. Because fundamentally, you're making someone do something that they don't want to do. What if that's the type of game they want to make? Well, then they can make that game. That's fine. I'm just saying that if you want to hit a mainstream audience and you want to get a lot of people playing your game, you can't make PvP a mainstay of your MMO. And you can't make it mandatory.
Does Ashes of Creation force us to do PvP? In some ways, yeah, for sure. And even when we're not wanting to, again, a flagged player could still kill a white player, right? Which is like a green player, you know, so to speak, in the game. So there really isn't any way to escape it. Now, the good thing about Ashes of Creation, unlike World of Warcraft, is that in World of Warcraft, you're not punished for killing another player. In Ashes of Creation, you are, with the corruption and blight system. Now, that system is still very much in the prototype phase, in my opinion, and it'll be interesting to see how that system evolves. But the fact remains is that Ashes of Creation is trying to give you a mix of PvP and PvE, whether you like it or not. Like, even if you're trying to kill a world boss, like we were talking about earlier, there can always be the threat of PvP at your back. And is that a good thing? I think it just comes to the player base, really. I think, you know, Ashes of Creation has never been shy to admit what kind of game they are. And I think if you're going to try Ashes of Creation, everybody will tell you right off rip what kind of game this is. Now, if you like that or not, that's up to you. But I don't think Ashes of Creation has ever tried to hide that. And the reason why I like that is because it's just something different. I think PvP MMOs get a bad rap, whether it's because of pay-to-win mechanics, whether it's because, honestly, the devs that usually make them are super small and they don't really have the systems that PvPers crave to consistently want to play that game. And I think that's mostly the death of like the seasonal cycle, which I really don't like. But I think with their Sand Park approach, they could really make some really cool sandbox elements for PvPers that keep players engaged, and they've already been doing it. There's almost so much Discord PvP already happening with, you know, politics and who's going to be the mayor and what is the mayor going to do for a node, and there's just so much political intrigue in this game that keeps it alive. And again, there is so many systems still missing from this game that's going to make that even more in-depth and much more fun for players. But I do think the genre deserves something different. And I think people are so used to just another PvE MMO coming out, and, you know, that's fine. However, I am looking for something different. And by the looks of it, there's a lot of other people that are looking for something different too. And I think something different should exist, is my point.
I also think that you should be able to buy and sell any gear in the game. I don't think that they should try to lock you in. Like, a BDO has this. And if people want to, like, you know, cheat and RMT, that's fine. Let them do it. Just ban them. Why? Because I think it gives people more options, and I think locking people into gear and then them not being able to trade their gear away or sell it, I think is unnecessary. Not fuck RMT. I mean, like, am I the only person, like, if a developer doesn't care about their game so much that they can't even moderate people doing RMT, that I probably shouldn't care about their game enough to play it? Is that, like, maybe a weird take? Like, if you don't care about RMT so much that you're letting it be a negative impact on the game, and in order to solve this problem, you're going to punish the entire player base by not allowing people to do certain types of trades like BDO, or like WoW. WoW is also like this too. Then I don't want to play the game because you don't care about the game.
And finally, and actually ended off with a good note, right? I think every MMO should allow you to buy and sell any of your gear, whether you have it equipped or not. I think that's another really good thing Ashes of Creation is trying to do, actually, with the fact that any gear you have equipped on you and you get something better, you can trade your old piece to a friend. I think that's amazing. And I really loved what he said when it came to, you know, people were talking about RMT, right? Which is a huge issue. And it actually is a current issue in Ashes of Creation's alpha right now, which is quite crazy. But if the developers don't care enough about RMT to fix it and, you know, have it removed from their game, then why should I care? And then that's a very goated statement. I think that's a very on the money statement. And I think Ashes of Creation right now currently has been doing just that. There's been a lot of RMT of people buying gold and buying gear from the game, and there's accounts being permanently banned. And that's something I don't see even in multi-billion-dollar companies, is there's so much laxation happening in the market that you have even World of Warcraft. I mean, they even sell WoW tokens, so it's like, why are we going to ban it or whatever? But I think that's also the very quick fix for those companies too, is just to add a, you know, bind on a equip system, bind on a pickup system, right? Like, so that way people can't trade, you know, it is what it is. And I just think it's really stupid. I think for a trading economy, like, it's just really nice to have, you know, gear just kind of flowing through and stuff like that, when it's like, what else are we gonna be able to sell, right? That lends so much to other professions and having to create to make a really good economy. I think Ashes of Creation is going to be a really good spot for that. But guys, excuse me, what did y'all think about this particular video? Did you like a lot of the takes Asmongold said? Did you agree with him? Did you disagree with him? Let me know in your comments, in the comments down below, and I will see you guys on the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe.